Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX. We're actually down at Geico Honda's race shop today, and there's a good reason why. As we all know, they're Honda's main 250 effort here in the States, and we have a 2018 Honda CRF250R to look over. We got Bill Wepner with us, who's Special Project Lead at American Honda over all the CRF projects. So, of course, you can see before us, it looks a lot like the new 450 from last year, which was pretty darn new. This is even more new than that, as lame as that's nice to say. Engine. Main reason why, if you look down, this is an all-new engine for Honda. They've always been really well known for the unicams. This is actually a DOHC, dual overhead cam, twin cam engine, and there's quite a bit else going on there. So let's break it down and just go over the basic engine architecture. What do we got new this year, Bill?
Like you just mentioned, DOHC is one of the biggest changes we've gone towards on the new bike. And essentially we did that because the type of riding that we typically see on a 250F is looking for peak horsepower, looking for high rev, certainly looking for good breadth of power across the entire RPM range. And really with this DOHC technology that we kind of developed with some MotoGP teams or through our own development within MotoGP, that suits this style of riding a lot more than the unicam does, the high revving and the demand for big horsepower in a small displacement motor.
I think we've talked about from our experiences with the last generation Honda 250. From your 2010 on to last year, you guys had a little bit larger stroke, a little bit smaller bore. Definitely was an engine that was a little bit better in that. 250s are always screamers, but it was definitely in the range of 250Fs, a little bit more low to mid. This one, you guys have not only done the dual overhead cam, you've gone to a larger bore, shorter stroke. The dual overhead cam actually is a rocker setup, correct? Not a bucket engine. So
yep, that's correct.
A lot of stuff based, like I said, off that Moto. Basically, what do you guys do? Moto 2 on this engine supplier for it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
Yeah, so a lot of really screaming little engines out there running around. A lot of that's been dropped into this new 250F. Talk about why the rocker arm setup. Explain to people why that works out better for the RPMs.
Well, the cool thing about the valve train that we developed for this bike is that the cams are riding directly on DLC-coated finger followers, which then push down on the valve spring and the valve. So we're able to maintain a lot better control of the valve spring, and what that really helps to do is give more effective power, more increased power throughout the rev range. Certainly on the top end, it helps a lot with the RPMs that we're pushing through this motor now. We've actually increased the RPM limit to increased it by 900 RPM for 2018. So that gives you an indication of how far this bike will rev, and it certainly pulls the power to that point.
I think that was the interesting part. You guys showed us a little dyno graph, no official numbers yet, but looking at it, you can see the huge amount of changes from mid to top, how the power continues on. Like you said, the old engine was built low to mid. Even though it revved pretty high, you could see where it would start to sign off. This one pulls 900 RPM longer, and it is still making power as it's going up.
Yep.
I think last year you guys kind of gave us a little heads up. 450 was somewhere like around a 10 or 11% power gain is what you guys claimed, and that's what rang true when we dynoed it. What can we expect out of this 250?
Basically that same percentage increase, about a 10% increase over the 17-year model 250.
Okay. So continuing on with the engine, we talked about a couple parts that of course made a bigger deal. I mean, like I said, we've got a raised compression ratio too. You've also got intake valves and exhaust valves that are bigger, especially intake. You guys, a lot of people think we've got the downdraft exhaust like the 450. So now that the valves are not as much of an angle, they're able to be brought up straighter. You can actually have a bigger valve and there's not as much danger of them overlapping. So there's a lot of really cool tidbits from a technical side that equal more power and just more capability. But moving on from there is the overall design. Weight's one that comes to mind. Like I'm looking interesting feature, the cam chain and all the cam drive unit is actually on the right side of the engine where most of your competitors are on the left-hand side. Why is that?
Really with starting with a whole new platform, we wanted to not use the base of any previous model year, but start all new, and that allowed us to do some unique things, one of which is the DOHC, another is the twin head pipes, and further on is just we're trying to maximize weight reduction anywhere we can, and if that means placing things in different areas, being more creative with how we get to the end result, that's really what we attempted to do with this motor. Instead of using, something that we're familiar with, we wanted to, start entirely from scratch. And if that meant changing the positioning of something or adding a second head pipe, as long as it benefited the customer, we wanted to achieve that, and I think we did with 2018.
So you brought up during that last answer is the twin head pipes. That's another huge feature. I mean, anybody on that side of the camera is seeing one head pipe, but as we saw from the spy shots from Japan, some little sneak peeks, is there's one on this side too. Now, the biggest difference though, if you get to see both sides, is they're different. Head pipe on that side is longer, it's got a resonance chamber, some of the diameters are different. The side we're looking at over here is a little bit shorter, doesn't have a resonance chamber. Like I said, we've got two different exhaust ports leading to each one. I mean, there's a couple ways to think about this, whether it has to do with, the main one that pops in my mind is you're able to accomplish the range of power by using two different head pipes. You're able to get basically the all-around range of power you're looking for. Is that what you guys were trying to do?
Yeah, typically there's a loss of power with the curve of the head pipe, and we're able to more effectively manage that by having the two head pipes reduce that curve loss by managing it separately through each pipe. And really, the focus on this bike was to improve intake efficiency as well as exhaust efficiency to maximize performance potential. And by having the most direct intake and the most direct exhaust, we're really able to achieve that. But ultimately, we can't go through the frame to just make a single head pipe come out of the exhaust port. So we split it into two, and then we manage any of the curve loss through the two head pipes as opposed to the one.
So I think the other thing is interesting, of course, when it first came up that there would be twin head pipes on the spikes and the sneak peeks we've seen. Some consumers would freak out, oh, two systems, that's going to be really expensive. So I've actually talked to one of the larger exhaust manufacturers, we'll keep a name for the moment, but one of the, I would say, bigger 3 or 4 that makes pipes, and they will make one for this bike. We were talking about design with this exhaust versus the 450. Now, where the 450 splits from a single to a twin, no exhaust expert here, there's an item called a collector inside that's, from my understanding, a little bit of an expensive part to produce. So the comments I heard is this system, theoretically, without the collector and just having a simple head pipe on one side, and it is a pretty simple design to just build 2 separate systems, they actually don't think the cost will be realistically anything more. So something, neat for people that are already considering that as an option in the future. We're not looking at a massive increase in a part like that because it's a fairly simple design to manufacture.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the head pipe construction of the stock bike, there isn't the wide pipe, which any manufacturer, any aftermarket manufacturer would need to do more welding, more bending, more cutting. So I would anticipate that due to the straight nature of the head pipe on both sides, that it's going to be relatively inexpensive for them to produce. So hopefully there's not too much of a cost added to the aftermarket replacement exhaust on this bike.
So the last big feature to talk about the engine for anybody can see from that side is there's no electric starter. Unlike with the 450, you guys introduced electric start standard this year, but it was still based off an engine that had a kickstart. It was removed, but the boss area is still there. There's still some weight there. Once again, you guys were starting from the ground up. You decided to make this one electric start only. The Kickstarter area is removed. It seems like a pretty big decision.
Yeah, we wanted to look for every opportunity to make a weight reduction, and through our development on the 450 and then leading into the 250, we found that electric start was very reliable. We have a really high performance battery in the bike, so we've had nothing but success with the electric start on this bike, and didn't really feel with the direction the market was going and what we were building that it was necessary to have a kick backup, and I think the customer is going to agree when they get a chance to ride this bike.
So I think the other interesting thing that got brought up at the 450 intro recently is the battery. Andrew Short actually brought this up about the weight. So of course we know, Honda specifically amongst most of your Japanese brands is a company very big about safety. So with batteries, they've stuck with lead acid in the past just for the safety reasons. Some of your lithium ions or your LiPo style batteries aren't exactly the most safe option sometimes for a dirt bike. So Honda partnered with a brand in Japan, and I got this wrong the other day. This is actually a lithium iron phosphate battery.
Yeah, lithium iron phosphate cathode construction in the battery. You could still refer to it as a lithium ion battery, but the cathode construction on a lithium iron phosphate is a bit different than a typical lithium ion battery. This is a much more durable, reliable battery construction. So it's not something you'd have to be concerned about leaving on a charger in your garage or just maintaining in general. It holds a charge a lot longer than your more conventional lithium-ion battery. So I think the consumer will find that this is a really good lightweight battery for their needs.
So positives, very light, like your aftermarket batteries, some of the guys have put on some of the other manufacturers' bikes. It's very safe, and then the other one you mentioned is durability. We're just charge time, the charge it holds, a little bit better situation for somebody that leaves the bike in the garage for a couple months. There's a higher chance of them coming back to this bike and finding that you press the button, the thing fires right up.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, like I said, we've covered a lot. There's definitely a lot of new parts in this engine. Make sure you check out the technical briefing on the article we're going to post on this because there's a lot to go over. Now let's move on to the other feature, which is familiar to people that checked out the 450, is the all-new chassis, the bodywork, the suspension, pretty much all those goodies. Now, I thought it was really interesting talking to you guys. The chassis, the swing arm and the actual main chassis, other than the cradle, the things that relate to how the engine bolts in, the cradle itself, all this is carryover from the 450 to a T, correct?
Yeah, we do use the same main frame, subframe. The engine cradle is a little bit different for the 250 motor and some of the mount points, but same geometry, same wall thickness. We had really great success with the 450 this year with sales and customer feedback. And I think that you're going to find that this chassis is really improved for the 250, and I think regardless of skill level, you'll find a big improvement over previous model year on this bike.
Yeah, for anybody who's wondering, I mean, once again, check out the details. You can find out we've got like a shorter swing arm here. There's a little bit more slack to the front end. Front tires out there a little bit farther. It's an overall change geometry. I know a lot of us after riding the 450 last year that really mimics and reminds us more of the OA, and a lot more of the numbers match up to those generation of Hondas when it comes to the handling characteristics. Going on to the suspension, once again, same units from the 450. We have this, what we're considering, the A-kit fork, basically from Showa, and having just recently actually taken apart a set of the newest A-kit, it is really darn close to the real thing. There's only a couple little components in there, and they're more of a, I would say, a cost and a durability issue than a performance issue. The majority of what you need is in this fork. Shock, same way. The shock's in the real low mount because we have the downdraft in there. Like I said, these are units from the 450. How close are they? Is triple clamp, your fork thickness, all that, like the tubing thickness, all the same from the 450?
Yeah, on 250 to 450, clamps, suspension is identical. Different valving on the 250 due to the weight of the bike and the anticipated customer type or usage, but exactly the same tubes and diameters and thicknesses as what we have on the 450.
So I think, of course, the biggest thing is people see electric start, they see the extra exhaust, they think things that add up to weight. So wet weight last year versus this year, where are we at? And I guess to keep in mind, people, one big one is spring forks here. A lot of people didn't want air, so you guys took the step up. You not only brought back spring, you went to a very high-end fork. I know that alone is 3 pounds, roughly 2.9 to 3 pounds. What else are we looking at in weight?
Our wet weight with fuel and all fluids is 238, so I think we're about 7 or 8 pounds heavier than previous. But again, we've added some features to this bike, like you mentioned, the spring fork and the electric start system. But I think the engineers did an incredible job reducing weight in every other area possible. Overall, it's a really well handling machine, feels really light, still retains some of the kind of classic Honda feel and characteristics, but I think it's much more refined for riders of all skill level, and that weight reduction is typical of a Honda. It doesn't feel heavy in the air, it doesn't feel heavy on the track, and even putting it on the stand, it still feels really light.
So I think a lot of people are wondering when we're going to see these stateside.
Right now, that's hasn't been entirely determined, but I'm hoping that bikes are in dealers sometime in November this year.